Joining us for the first time, as we said, he's a linguistics professor at the University of California, Berkeley. Good morning.
Pleasure to be here.
You've been spending a lot of time with Democrats recently. What do you tell a room full of Democrats when you talk to them about their message?
First, I tell them what they're up against. For the past 35 years, the conservative Republicans have been building up think tanks and a huge message machine. They've spent about $3 billion doing it. Everybody's trained over there. They have language manuals. They have language training. They have reframed every issue. They have thousands of people working on these things. They're up against a lot. And so the first thing is they have to know how much they're swamped. The second thing they have to know is this. The way that Republicans have framed every issue, and they have framed every issue their way in a way that most people don't even know about, is this. They've used language in a way that evokes frames. Frames are conceptual structures, simple ones. I mean, you take a cup, okay? We have an image of a cup. We know that it has, like, it's a container. It may have a handle. You can drink out of it. You know, that knowledge is a frame, very simple. You use cups. The word cup evokes an image in your brain, and you know, it's part of the way you think, part of common sense. The same thing with a word like relief. You say, in order for there to be relief, there has to be some sort of affliction, an afflicted party who's harmed by it, some reliever who takes it away, and if anybody tries to stop them, they're a bad guy because affliction should be taken away. You add tax to that, and you get taxation is an affliction. You repeat that every day, over and over and over, and people's brains change. They view taxation as an affliction. This is part of changing the common sense of America. That's the way conservatives have done it over the past 35 years. And the Democrats haven't done it.
Talk about some more issues specifically. You brought up taxes. George Lakoff, apply this concept of language and framing and the words to an issue like abortion.
Well, the question is, whose issue is it? The word abortion uses the word abort. The word abort suggests something is terribly wrong, as in abort the mission. The conservatives have made that their issue. There are other issues that should be talked about that cover this. One issue is the issue of life. The conservatives have tried to take away what are naturally progressive values: life, compassion, freedom, personal freedom, responsibility. These are natural progressive values, and conservatives have tried to redefine them so that, you know, life between birth and death is a natural progressive value. The way to take back life is to talk about infant mortality. What's happening with infant mortality? We have the highest rate in the industrialized world. Why? Because conservatives have been against prenatal care, postnatal care, appropriate medical care for children. They're killing babies, basically. And the same is true in other areas. Take the fact that children are born with 100 toxic chemicals in their body, and mother's milk has 100 toxic chemicals. Mercury is there. This is terrible. Why? Because conservatives are against cleaning up the environment. Conservatives are killing babies. This is something very important that we ought to be talking about. There are other issues related to this. For example, take the question of unwanted pregnancies. Nobody wants unwanted pregnancies. That's why they're unwanted. And yet, a great many of the unwanted pregnancies come from young women who don't have access to birth control or haven't had sex education courses. Yet, conservatives are against sex education courses. They're against distributing birth controls. We have the problem of vigilante pharmacists who won't distribute birth control pills. This is a situation that's intolerable. What needs to be said is that we should get rid of unwanted pregnancies. Zero tolerance for this. You know, there's no reason to not have sex education, to not supply contraceptives. That's the real problem, unwanted pregnancies. And there are other issues as well. The number 25,000 should be burnished in everybody's brain. Why? Because 25,000 is the number of women who get pregnant through rape each year. 25,000 all over America. The question should be asked, should the government force women to bear the children of their rapists? If you answer no, if you don't think they should force them to bear the children of their rapists, What does that mean? There have to be appropriate clinics, there have to be medical facilities all over America for this. Conservatives, so far, have been against it. This is an issue that should be discussed over and over.
We're talking about the future of the Democratic Party and specifically about words and messages and framing. Our guest is George Lakoff, who is a linguistics professor, as we said. He's also senior fellow at something called the Rockridge Institute. What is that?
The Rockridge Institute is a think tank. We study how issues are framed both by conservatives and by progressives. And what we've noticed is that progressives are not framing their issues as well. That is, they have values, but they don't talk about them very well. They have things that they feel, but they don't express in arguments. This used to be true of conservatives. Back when Goldwater lost in 1964, conservatives didn't have most of the ideas and arguments they had today. Those think tanks, at the cost of $3 billion over this period, have worked out all those arguments, provided language, put them in the media. What we need to do is work out the details of what lies behind the feeling that progressives have that certain things are right and certain things are wrong. When you work out the details, it becomes obvious that this is the case, and that's just what we've been doing.
One of the books that our guest, George Lakoff, has authored is called Don't Think of an Elephant, Know Your Values, and Frame the Debate. It's got a foreword by Howard Dean. You write in here, Professor Lakoff, your work on politics started back in the fall of '94.
Yes.
Talk to us about that period and what were you politically prior to that point, and how'd you get involved in all this?
Well, first of all, I've always been a progressive since I was a kid. So I grew up in a political town and a political family. Many of my friends went into politics in one way or another. So I've always been interested in it, but I've been a linguist for many, many years. My job is to study language and its relation to the mind and the brain. And what happened in '94 was very simple. I, out of civic duty, I consider it my duty to understand the people I disagree with. That's my job, both as a citizen and as a linguist. And I picked up a copy of the Contract with America, and I asked myself a cognitive science question. What did the various arguments there have to do with each other? You have people who are against abortion, and the same people are for the flat tax. And the same people, what does the flat tax have to do with abortion? The same people are for owning guns. What does that have to do with the flat tax? The same people are against environmental regulations. What does that have to do with owning guns, and so on? What brings these positions together? I found this very puzzling, and I'd always found conservatives very puzzling. Although I knew many, and I have friends who are conservatives, who I like a lot. So I asked myself, what do my positions, which are they're very opposite, have to do with each other? I couldn't answer it. So I sat down and did some cognitive science research. I asked, what brought these positions together? And when I started looking at the family values literature, what I found was quite simple, though it should be obvious, but it's not until you do it. There are two models of the family that are projected by a metaphor we all have. The nation is a family. We have founding fathers. No, we don't question that. We send our sons and daughters to war. Those models of the family, a strict father family and a nurturing parent family, lie behind and structure conservative and progressive values in America. And it's the details that are important. I just gave them names, but in moral politics, I work out the details, and there's 500 pages of details.
Here's the book on the screen. When did you write this?
1996 is when it came out.
Let's go to calls for George Lakoff. Denver, Colorado, you're up first. Good morning.
Yes, hi. The rhetoric of the right is increasingly rabid. I mean, take Santorum, for example. Should Democrats or progressive even bother trying to reach out to the followers of these people, or should we just change the argument altogether?
Well, one of the things that I've discovered is this. Most people, maybe all, have both models, both a strict and nurturant model, both of the family and of their politics and morality. For example, you might be nurturant or progressive in every part of your life, but you can go to an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie and understand it. You don't walk out saying, what was that about? If you understand it, you have a strict father model of morality. And the same thing is true of conservatives who can turn on the Bill Cosby show and understand it. The interesting thing is that many people have both models active, but in different parts of their lives. So the Reagan Democrats were people who were strict fathers at home, but nurturant in their union politics. And Reagan used metaphors for the home to take that strict father model and apply it to politics. The same is true of many other people around the country who are what I would call partial progressives and partial conservatives, but in different ways. They're not lined up on a line. They have different views for different parts of their lives. I could go through this if you like. And what that means is that one can talk to these folks and activate your model in them. That is, what conservatives do is they talk to folks who have both models by talking to their base, by using the language of the strict father model to evoke a strict father model. And what progressives need to do is to talk to those parts of what I call biconceptuals, people who have both models, those parts that agree with you, and try to activate them.
Greenville, South Carolina, for George Lakoff. Good morning to you. Greenville, you there? Greenville, South Carolina. Let's try, not there, let's try Austin, Texas instead. Hi, Austin.
Hi there.
Go ahead, please.
Hi.
Just wanted to say that it's, as usual, the Democrats seem to be behind the curve on this one. The Republicans have been doing this for a very long time. It does seem to me, though, that they've been so successful because, or one of the reasons they've been so successful is because they have so much help from the media. For instance, when they want to frame something like they want to change suicide bomber to homicide bomber, Fox News immediately picked it up and started calling them homicide bombers. It seems to me like they have their own television station in Fox News. They did recently changing the nuclear option to the constitutional option, and immediately Fox started picking it up and trumpeting the constitutional option. So it seems like they've got a lot of help in the media.
The role of the media in all this.
Well, it's not just the media. First, they've got help from a language organization, from Luntz and Company, who tells them, change the words here. They have a network that they can send messages out to that says, use this word instead of that word all over the place, and hundreds and hundreds of people change instantly, one day to the next. It's not just Fox News, it's all over the country in their network. In addition, conservatives have a booking agency that book people all over the country. During the Terry Schiavo case, for example, there were 15 full-time bookers working 24/7 to book their people on TV all over the country. The Democrats don't have that. They don't have the capacity to book, and they don't have the capacity to have a network that says, change this language, and they don't have the capacity to test the language that's been changed. The Republicans have an enormous capacity for this.
That being said, tell us, George Lakoff, to the extent you can, how much you've met with the Democratic Party. What kind of groups? Are there individual sessions? Is it the top leadership? And how do we know, by what we hear them say on TV and the radio, that they're getting it, in your view?
Well, I've met with a number of people in the Senate.
Mm-hmm.
I've met with a number of people in the House. I've met with people at the DNC. I'm not there every day. I'm not one of their top consultants or anything of that sort. And I think they get a lot of the general ideas. They have understood that there's a problem about messaging. They've understood that there's a problem about framing. However, there are a couple of difficulties. First, they don't have this huge message machine or anything like it. Secondly, they're not trained. They don't have the kind of training institutes that you have, like the Leadership Institute in Virginia, which has trained tens of thousands of conservatives over the years. They don't have those training facilities. In addition, the people in the House and the Senate are up against it every day. They are constantly assaulted by new conservative ideas and language coming at them day after day after day. And they're in a position of doing defense, not offense. They're not out there putting their ideas out there day after day after day. They're doing damage control. They're trying to stop legislatively what's going on. They're being kept very, very busy. My heart goes out to them. There are a lot of wonderful people in the House and the Senate, and they're very, very smart. The problem is that there isn't the time and the resources.
We'll talk about Howard Dean in just a minute. Want to get a call in first from Lansdale, Pennsylvania. Good morning.
Good morning.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, my question is for the professor. He mentioned basically concerning framing the debate. And what is implicit in that argument, I would have to say, also I'm a conservative supporter, is that basically the Republicans, as they argue their side, basically their arguments and their words don't necessarily correspond to reality. He mentioned, for instance, abortion. He said basically that they have, basically what his argument implies that somehow the Republicans have really twisted the arguments or twisted how words actually do correspond to reality. And I would argue that premise, basically, for instance, I had a debate once with a person concerning abortion. They said the person was progressive, both people, and I was conservative from the conservative side. And basically the argument centered on her argument was that both people, both conservatives and liberals in abortion, argue for the protection of life. Well, really what it was an equivocation of lifestyle and life. My argument was that abortion ends a life. Her argument was that abortion helps a mother in her lifestyle that she chooses. So I guess I would have to take some argument about exactly who is really framing debates. It seems as if liberals or even progressives, which he calls himself a progressive, which is a liberal, which is a socialist, which is a communist, they are the ones who always look to the words to basically kind of askew what the arguments are. Most progressives, in my opinion, can't even come out and fully state what their positions are. Because it's not that as if the conservatives has taken over the framing of the debate. It's really that the liberals' ideas don't necessarily correspond to the core values and don't correspond well at all to the middle ground of America.
Thanks, Professor Lakoff.
Well, let's take an example of an issue of reality. This week we heard Tom DeLay talking about dismembering stem cells, dismembering embryos. The term embryonic stem cell research is used because Frank Luntz told people to use it. Why? Because take the image that people have of an embryo. The mental image is of like a little baby, like a fetus. But the stem cell research is not done on anything that looks anything like that. Actual stem cell research is done on what's called a blastocyst. It's a hollow sphere. It contains only stem cells, about 80 to 100 of them, undifferentiated. There are no skin cells, no blood cells, no hair cells, no nerve cells, just undifferentiated stem cells. It's like the difference between an egg and a chicken. You can scramble an egg, you don't scramble a chicken, and you can dismember a chicken, you don't dismember an egg. It's quite false to talk about dismembering an embryo used in stem cell research.
You spoke this week at the Progressive Conference that we've been covering all week. Of course, we watched Howard Dean's speech yesterday. Let's talk about Mr. Dean, because he's all over the papers today, and here's the USA Today version of his speech yesterday. Dean launches an anti-GOP missile. Let me begin, not with yesterday, but with this paragraph here. They lay out some of the things Mr. Dean has said, and as we talk about language, I want to get your reaction. Since he was chosen February 12th to head the DNC, in one speech he said, "I hate the Republicans." In another speech he said, "Republicans are mean." As we know, in another speech, Tom DeLay ought to go back to Houston where he can serve his jail sentence. Yesterday's speech was focused on This Way in USA Today and other papers. He basically said Republicans don't work for an honest living. We have a clip we'll show you. The comment came as he recalled conditions in crowded Ohio polling stations last fall, and he talked about Republicans and work. We'll take a look at that and then get a reaction.
The idea that you have to wait online for 8 hours to cast your ballot in Florida, there's something the matter with that. You think people can work all day and then pick up their kids at child care or wherever and get home and then have still manage to sandwich in an 8-hour vote? Well, Republicans, I guess, can do that because a lot of them have never made an honest living in their lives. But for ordinary ordinary working people who have to work 8 hours a day. They have kids. They got to get home to those kids. The idea of making them stand for 8 hours to cast their ballot for democracy is wrong. We ought to make voting easier to do.
George Lakoff, we know there's an underlying issue he's talking about, but does that kind of language that we talked about help the cause here for the party?
First of all, that snippet, I was there for the speech. That snippet was taken out of context, as was this report. He was talking about Republican lawmakers. He was not talking about Republican voters. Lawmakers, not voters. He was talking about the people who put the machines and decide how many voting machines go in which district. That's what he was talking about. And he was talking about, people who are doing that, not caring about working people, in Democratic districts. Now, that's what he was saying, and it was taken out of context. And this is the entire USA Today report is exactly like that.
Mm-hmm. The RNC spokeswoman called the quote honest living comment mudslinging and scored Dean for attacking the work ethic of the record number of hardworking Americans who voted for President Bush, it says here. And then speaking to your comment, Democratic Party spokeswoman said Dean was referring to Republican politicians and not leadership, as you just pointed out. It's all in USA Today and other papers. Baton Rouge, Louisiana, good morning.
Good morning. I've been noticing this for quite some time, especially when Clinton was running for office, or even before then. They kept moving more and more towards Republican positions instead of explaining why this is bull. I used to hear a lot of phrases like, well, money is the same thing as speech. Well, that's ridiculous, because even though Bill Gates has a lot more money than I am, his political ideas may not be any better than mine. I don't hear Democrats fighting back, and that's why I supported Howard Dean, because I did hear somebody actually fighting back and saying how much bullshit this really is. Thank you.
Any response?
Well, on the issue of money, it's very important. Murdoch has a lot of money. He owns Fox News. He owns a lot of stations all over the country. The owner of Clear Channel has a lot of money, and that matters. It matters a great deal. They can get ideas across that I can't, because I don't have that much money.
Dallas, Texas, for George Lakoff. Welcome to the program.
Welcome. Mr. Lakoff made the statement twice that conservatives are killing babies. Mr. Lakoff, your people, the so-called liberals in this country, are the ones who advocated and pushed abortion through the Supreme Court and legalized something that had been illegal in every state in the Union ever since the country had been a republic. In the last 10 years, 1/3 of the babies born in this country have been aborted, and the taxpayers are now providing anybody who wants an abortion an abortion. We taxpayers who don't agree with abortion don't feel that this is very progressive, and we don't feel it's very rational to kill off our seed crop and then replace them with immigrants from Mexico, China, Honduras, Guatemala, wherever. How can you call yourself a progressive with when you support such an irrational and basically immoral and destructive policy as taxpayer-funded abortions on demand?
Professor.
There's no such thing as abortion on demand. It doesn't exist. It's absurd. Any woman who wants an abortion, who goes to a clinic, has to go through counseling, has to go through, a lot of things. She can't just, go and say, I want an abortion, and that's it. It's not the case. It's not true. Get your facts. Secondly, Roe versus Wade was an attempt to make abortion safe. It didn't increase abortion. It took abortions out of the back alleys from back alley abortionists who often were not doctors, who had no medical training, and women died from abortions in those cases. There wasn't more abortion at all. There were just safer abortions, saving women's lives all over the place. In addition, take those 25,000 women who get pregnant through rape. Is that your seed crop? The idea that these are that's seed crop? Come on.
Sarasota, Florida, for Professor George Lakoff. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Listen, I've never heard of you before, but I am amazed that somebody doesn't just hoist you up and make you king of the Democratic Party right now. Because last night, Mr. Neal was on Hannity and Combs, and Hannity said an out-and-out lie that goes right to the little clip that you had of Howard Dean, and Howard Dean said a lot of Republicans, not Republicans overall, or in general, he said a lot of Republicans don't work for a living, which is obviously a true statement anyway. But why doesn't Mr. Neal be more prepared when he comes on a show like Hannity and he knows he's going to get a set of questions? Number two, the pejorative liberal is what drives me crazy when anybody who has any kind of a brain, all they have to do is follow what FDR said a liberal was. Do you, sir, know what FDR said what a liberal was, as opposed to a radical or a conservative? Thank you very much.
Go ahead.
Well, let me say a little bit what I would say that a liberal or a progressive is. One of the major differences between progressives and conservatives is this. Progressives believe in the use of the commonwealth for the common good in order that people can be free to pursue their personal goals. What does that mean? Think, for example, of a freeway. You go out on your highways. How did it get there? You didn't build it. Taxpayers' money did. You get on the internet. How did it get there? You know, the ARPANET, which is where the internet came from, was paid for by taxpayers' money. Someone wants to start a business. They get a bank loan. How did the banking system get established? How is it kept there? It's kept there because of federal institutions like the Federal Reserve, for example, or the federal insurance. A business needs legal protection. We have the courts. Probably 90% of the courts are corporate law, paid for by taxpayer money. That's the use of the common good, and nobody makes it alone in this country. No businessman makes it on his own. They're using the commonwealth for the common good, which is proper. That's how you achieve your personal goals, through public education, through hospitals, libraries, and so on. That's what liberals believe in. What conservatives believe in is everybody should do it on their own. There is no common good beyond the sum of private goods. That's a major difference, and they're just wrong.
Caller from Oxford, Mississippi. Go ahead, please.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Lakoff, you sit in Berkeley, California, and I sit at the University of Mississippi in Oxford, Mississippi. And let me tell you, the center of thinking in this country is more in Oxford, Mississippi than it is in Berkeley, California.
Why do you say that? How do you know that?
Well, it's because 31 states in the United States voted for George Bush. 19 states voted for Mr. Kerry, which is represented by Berkeley, California. The blue states. The red states are the center of the thinking in this country. Now, if you think that America is Sweden, if you think America is Europe, if you believe in all of these things that have written by David Brooks in the New York Times yesterday, that general welfare measures, which are represented by the Democratic Party, ample labor protection, the little pinky ring labor bosses that you represent, highly progressive tax rates. You want to tax people, go back to the early 60s when we had 70% maximum tax rates in this country. A single-payer health care systems like Canada, which is going bankrupt in their health care system. Is that what you represent? Cradle-to-grave, middle-class subsidies supporting everything from child care to pension security?
Thanks. Let's get a response from our guest.
No. That's a parody of everything that I believe. And it has nothing to do with anything. Let's take an example of the use of government money for supporting people. Take the $160 billion given last December by the Republican administration in subsidies to private companies. $160 billion, twice the $87 billion spent in Iraq and so on. What does that mean? That's a transfer of wealth from you, the taxpayer, you, to private investors. Now, what justifies that? Well, private investors in these companies say, look, this is a risky investment. Investing in oil or agribusiness is supposed to be a risky investment. To make up for the risk, to make sure we can make a profit, we need government subsidies. Is this equality of opportunity or equality of outcome? It's clearly equality of outcome for private investors and private companies paid for by our taxpayers. And at the same time, if you look at the bottom 25% of our working population, and you, sir, may be part of that for all I know, they're not getting paid very much for the work they do. These are people who are working for a living and not really making a living, can't afford health care, can't afford to send their kids to good colleges, or even perhaps good schools where they are. What that means is they are caught, they can't just pull themselves up by their bootstraps, all of them, 25% of our workforce, all at once. Go up all by your bootstraps, right? Where would they go? What jobs would they take? And who would take those jobs? They are caught in a cheap labor trap. This economy is set up to reduce the cost of labor for many, many things, and there are a huge number of people in this country who cannot just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. Perhaps individually they can, but not all at once. And they are supporting the lifestyles of the top 3/4 of the country. We owe them gratitude, and more than gratitude, we owe them something more, the ability to live a decent life, because they are contributing to our society in a crucial way.
Let me get your reaction, George Lakoff, to something Noam Scheiber wrote recently in the New Republic about you. The real problem with Lakoff is that as he has grown more prominent in Democratic circles, he has begun substituting the ideologically agnostic critique he laid out in Moral Politics, your book, with the liberal prescriptions he favors personally. Lately, he's begun promoting the idea that Democrats can regain their majority by embracing their more liberal impulses while emphasizing the values that underlie their positions. It is the Democrats' ineptness at showcasing their values, Lakoff says, not their liberalness per se, that has hurt them in the past. This has, not surprisingly, endeared him to the party's liberal base, but if this is the lesson Democrats take from Lakoff's work, they could be in for a long, cold exile. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I wrote a reply to that, which has not yet appeared, but they usually wait a month before they print replies. It isn't true. What I say in the book is the following. Democrats disagree tremendously. There is a wide range of views among Democrats in Congress and in the Senate and throughout the country. If you take a look at what they disagree over, and then you ask, what do they agree about? There's a lot that they agree about. They agree about basic moral values, progressive values. They agree about general policy directions. Everybody should have health care. We should have a sustainable environment, and so on. These are positions held across the board by all Democrats. What I suggest is a unity position, something that is agreed upon by all Democrats across the board. And if you adopt a unity position and look at the content of it, these are traditional American values. They're the values that we all share, and that's what's discussed in detail in that book. Scheiber just got it wrong.
Last call here for our guest, Baltimore. Good morning to you.
Yeah, I'm calling in reference to, I would like the public first to understand the word dialectic. Look it up in your dictionary. I first came across it with...
what was the word again, caller?
Dialectic.
Can you spell it?
Dialectic?
Dialectic?
Yeah, D-I-L-E-C-T-I-C.
Okay.
Okay, and it first came to my mind when I first heard Rush Limbaugh use his accusation in the windows to persuade the people. This was developed by George Hegel during Karl Marx's reign, and he persuaded, it's a system of persuading people using accusations and innuendos. In other words, they would throw out an accusation and wait for a response, and then you'd spot truths to persuade the people that you're thinking like me or that you agree. Hitler used it to persuade the people to allow the Holocaust. And now you got Rush Limbaugh and a lot of these conservative shows come on and tell the people, well, let me tell you about my opinion, and they'll give half truths, just as the guest brought up and brought some examples of how it's diverted slightly enough to allow an individual to
Okay.
agree.
Let's hear from our guest.
Okay, well, look, first of all, that's not what Hegel said about dialectic. Dialectic, in general, is the idea of a dialogue. The idea that when two people have a dialogue, you disagree and try to come to some common conclusion and some agreement where they come together. That's not anything that Hitler used or anything of the sort. Don't trust Rush Limbaugh for the meaning of words, especially words used by philosophers. So that's just nonsense.
Professor George Lakoff has been our guest. Here is two books again. On the right, Moral Politics, How Liberals and Conservatives Think. And on the left, Don't Think of an Elephant, Know Your Values and Frame the Debate. Back to Howard Dean real quick, who wrote the foreword in that book. To what extent do you expect to have a relationship with the head of the party and individual members in the years to come?
I hope to have a very good relationship with not only the DNC, but with the Senate and the House. I like. They may disagree with each other on many things, but they agree on so much that it would be a shame if they didn't come out and find a unifying position, and it's my job to help them.
First visit to the Washington Journal. We appreciate your time this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Be here, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks to everybody who watched. We'll be back again at 7 o'clock tomorrow, as we are every day with the Journal. And one quick program note here for this network. Coming up in about an hour and 45 minutes, about 2 hours actually, noon Eastern Time, we will watch the release of the 2005 State Department report on human trafficking. Going to hear from Secretary of State Rice releasing this report about noon, and her senior advisor on the issue will then take questions afterwards. You can watch that here on this network. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekend, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
And looking at some of our political coverage